Hello and welcome to this new tutorial, and today you will see me creating this really hot and glowing metal spiral here. But the main focus here is the material, and I will walk through each node and will briefly explain why I added in the node and the material. And yeah, in the first minute here you will see me creating this metal spiral here, and I added in a Bezier curve. And now I go into the curve properties and just set the mode or the filling mode to full, and set the under geometry I set the depth to 0.24. So the curve gets some thickness. Now I press Alt-C, so I get a mesh, and now I will change here the tip of this thing. I simply extrude it, scale it a little bit, add some loop cuts with Ctrl R, and I simply adjust it. Make sure to save it. This isn't something, or this is something you should do regularly. So you don't lose anything if Blender should crash. Yeah, you see I added in a multi-res modifier, and I went into the sculpt mode. And you saw I drew something with the grease pencil, and I just wanted to show you what I do here in the sculpt mode. And you see here at these curves it's just a little bit flat, and I'll also address that with the polish brush, and I add in some creases with the crease brush, or some little scratches and such. Here I add in a texture with a resolution of 2048 by 50, and I will use that one later to control where my metal glows actually, so where it's heated and where not. And you see adjust the UV island here. Make sure it doesn't get outside of the image texture space, so it's in the texture. Here I add in a new material, and I press Shift F3 to go into the node editor, and I added in the image texture node and selected that node. And now I'm able to see it in the texture paint mode, so I can paint on the texture. And you see I just paint here the top part of the spiral totally white, and just fade it out just slightly. And that's my control for the emission. And here I added in the second texture, and here I just add in, or here I control the color of the material. So as you saw at the beginning on the spiral on the image, some parts are actually more yellowish, or some parts more dark red, and I will address that with this texture here. So I just paint with a little bit more grayish color, and also with a cloud texture, and I will use that later. And here I just fix some mistakes. Now we are in the final scene here, and as I said, I will walk you through all these nodes here for the material, so we'll actually get this result here. And show that really quick. This is how the final scene looks like in the rendered viewport here. But first I will show you some things I made and you saw that already in the time lapse, but I'll show it now really quick again. And yeah, I unwrapped this little spiral here, this metal, and I just selected loop with Alt and right click and press Ctrl E and mark seam, and I unwrapped it. And I also created two textures. The first one is the glow texture, and both textures have a resolution of 2048 times 50. And yeah, I use these as a mask, and I show you how they look like, because these are a little bit different than these ones you saw in the time lapse, because it's the final scene. And yeah, I spent a little bit more time in here and painted these textures a little bit more carefully, but it's just, yeah, there's no much of a difference, but they're just a little bit more detailed. So here, this is the first texture. This one will control the strength of the emission. So where it's black, there's no light, and where it's white, there's the most light, and everywhere where it's a little bit gray, there's just a little bit less light. And the second one is the color texture. It looks nearly the same, except that there are some even more darker spots in here. I also used a cloud texture to paint these. And when I load up the image here, my reference image, you see here are also some more yellowish parts, and you see here there's one of these grayish things, and we'll control that. So with this texture I control the color of the emission shader, or I just add in some details manually, and later we'll use textures as well to add some of these color variations. Yeah, so I will go into the rendered viewport here, and then we can start here on the first nodes. First I plug in a texture coordinate, so the mapping node knows what it should affect, and then I will scale it 9 times in the X direction and plug it into the image texture. And the image I use here is this image. It's a lava texture from Google Images. It's tileable, and I use that one. And you see it's on the whole surface, and it's pretty much, or it's pretty big scaled. And by the way, when I click Control Shift, you see my material gets connected with a view node, and we are in the material editor, and this is the node wrangler add-on. So add-ons and search for node wrangler. So just quick tip for you, and it's a pretty handy add-on because you can even look at these vectors here. And yeah, so we have this image texture, and now I want to separate these little cracks in here, so I add in a brightness contrast node. You find that one on the color, as well as the RGB curves. You find that on the color and mixed RGB as well. So I just increase the contrast and the brightness here a little bit, so I get more of these cracks, and also make it just a little bit brighter, so you see the difference. And I mix it with a black body node. Whoops, sorry, I changed the value here. And I mix it with a black body node, and you will find that one on the converter and black body. This uses, I think, Kelvin to control the color of the light and such. So you'll use that normally when you have a sun lamp. You will set a certain value here, and it uses Kelvin or so, you have to look in the manual, but one of these units. Yeah, I will mix that with a mix node. Again, under color mix, mix RGB. I will mix that, and you see really nothing except that there's just this orangish color, but you will see we have some of the little cracks here just slightly added in here. And this is how the black body node itself looks like. And when you just change the color, here you see it gets brighter, darker, like the metal would have a different temperature. So yeah, I mixed that together to get some of these little details in here, and I plug it into an emission shader into the color. And right now, so I set the strength to 10, maybe 12. And now you see it looks like this pretty strong yellow color. And this looks really boring and doesn't really look close to what we have here. But here we have a node setup for the strength, and I will plug that in really quick, and you see a really huge difference. And this just gets much closer to what we have here. How do I make that? Actually make this a little bit bigger so you see it a little bit better. How do I make that? I add in a magic texture, which looks like this, and I use the factor. I set the depth to 1 and the scale to 2.73 and the distortion of 0.08. And as many values here, you will have to change them to so they fit to your scaling. So maybe you have to use something totally different. So you see, or yeah, just try. It looks nearly the same because you see here the viewport. So see about the right scaling, and you'll just try to get it nearly the same or just how it looks the best for you. So here I add in a color ramp node to increase the contrast a little bit, so get more of this black here. And then I will multiply that with converter math and then set it to multiply. Then I multiply it with the color texture we had. So you remember here it was black and here it was white. So I'll multiply these two and just get here the top. And if you aren't familiar with the colors, how they work, 0 actually means 0, or sorry, black means 0 and white means 1. And when we have a strength here, you can see the same. 0, let me plug in the right shader here. 0 is black and 1 actually emits already some light. And here it makes sense that we control it with black and white values. So you see, here it's 1, so it would emit light, and here it's black, so it would emit no light. And yeah, that is what we basically do here. And yeah, here again, I add in some more details with a noise texture that's set to scale 27.68, detail of 5.3 and 0 distortion. I will use the factor, again a color ramp node, and I just bring up the black level just to a grayish color. So the black isn't as dark as before. And then I'll scale it, or multiply it, sorry, by 1.7, so it gets just way brighter. And then I will combine these two textures with multiply node, and you see we get just even more details right in here. If we would plug this into the emission shader, you see it looks, really red orangish color, and that doesn't look like it would glow much. So this would be a nearly cold iron. I mean, it's heated up, but yeah, it slowly cools down. But we multiply that by 12, so it gets actually even more strength. And you see now it looks actually hot and like it would be, like you took it right out of the fire, and yeah, it actually has, it's pretty hot, and we'll address that by multiplying everything by 12. So our original color 1 here, so you see white is 1, and when we multiply it by 12 we get 12. So the strength isn't 1, it's 12, and black equals to 0. 0 times 12 is still 0. So I hope you understand that. So we simply increase it, the strength. Let me see really quick down here. Again, we get the UV coordinate. Here, the texture coordinate, we get the UV socket, and we affect that with the mapping node. And this time we use a 10 times scaled texture, so 90, 10, 10. So it's exactly 10 times what we had above. Again, use this lava texture. I showed you really quick this texture, and now it's a pretty small pattern here. And these are really fine details. So again, using the brightness contrast node, adding some contrast so we get these cracks in between. Adding a hue saturation node, you will find that one under color, hue saturation, and just set the saturation to 0 so we get a black and white image. One of our best friends, the color ramp node, increase the contrast even more and just bring the black to dark grayish color here. You see it by bringing the white level just a little bit down, and then we will multiply that with this setup here. And here we use again the UV texture coordinate, scale it 18, 1.6 and 2. And yeah, again, you will have to change these to your own settings so it looks right. And here we actually use a paper texture. So you see, normal paper from CG Textures. And yeah, I also set in here some location offset, because you see the seam here, because this isn't a tileable texture. So I just offset it a little bit so we see it from the front, because I don't want to render it from the back, so I don't care about the seam. Otherwise I would have to make this a tileable texture. But we'll see it just from this perspective here, so we don't care about the seam on the back, and simply offset it here a little bit. So you see, well, let me copy that while you're really quick, and you'll see I can offset it, and you see the texture moves around. Yeah, we have the paper texture. Add in some more contrast here by using a color ramp again. Set it to B-spline, just a different interpolation mode here. So you see ease and cardinal and such. They're just really sharp transitions, and here it's a really soft one. And you also see the difference here on the model or the texture. So just bring up the black to about 0.7. Then again using the brightness contrast node, setting the contrast to 0.3. And now we will multiply that texture up here and this So we erase some of these cracks in here. So again, 0 is black and 1 is white. And when we multiply something times 0, it's again black. So we erase some of these parts here. Yeah. So we'll use that texture up here as a factor. But let me show you what happens here before. I will get that emission texture we create, or this emission shader we created up here. So right here at the top, this one. So we'll get that one, and we'll mix that with a diffuse shader. And you see it gets much darker, something like we had before when we had the strength at 1. Yeah, it's really dark. Also, I set the diffuse to a grayish color. And then we mix it with a little bit of glossy here. Maybe set it up just a little bit. It has a quite high roughness and also slightly color here. Yeah, mix it with factor of 0.3. And this is just so we get a dark version of our emission shader here. And let me see really quick. Yeah, here we get this emission shader. So just think here is an emission shader. This one up here, I showed you before. We use that emission shader to mix it with a second emission shader, which has a orangish skin tone color and a strength of 5. And we use this texture down here to mix it as a factor. And you see some of the little cracks in here. So like the metal is here a little bit more heated up. And then finally we combine this dark here and this really bright one here. We'll combine that one with a mix shader again. And you see this is really the final touch. And yeah, I just used the texture coordinate again. Scaled it to the size I want to have it. And then I used just some old painted metal. I made it tileable so I can adjust the size. And you see it's just really old metal or old painted metal. Maybe it was a little bit in the sun. And yeah, it gives really that look I wanna address. And yeah, I just desaturated, adding a contrast with 0.05, just invert it slightly with a factor of 0.136. Not sure why it did that one, but yeah, after a little bit of testing it just helped out to make it look a little bit better. Yeah, again, the color ramp node to add some more contrast, so I'll get just the parts I want to have. In this case, these little, this cracks or this, seams in here. And I use that black and white texture here as a factor. So everywhere where it's white, I use this dark shader, and everywhere where it's white, I use this shader. And you see this already looks like the look we had or we want to have. But you see now we have some problems up here, and that's that there is also this correct lava texture, and we'll fix that up here. So I create a simple let me see really quick. just set up the factor here a little bit. So I create a simple metal shader with a diffuse and a glossy. That one is really simple. Let me see really quick. Just add some more light here. So you see a really basic metal shader here. And yeah, I will use the glow texture again as a factor. So I can control that down here. I have this metal shader, and up here I have this emission shader we created. And you see this very nice transition in here. And right now it looks a little bit weird because I have this this texture in the background to light the scene, but we'll set that back to the original strength in just a minute. Yeah, we use that texture to control. Here's the metal shader and here's this emission shader. Down here I have the bump map. We can set that back here. So here I get this correct texture here, this painted metal, and I use that one here I just combine all these textures. So I combine this glow texture here with this lava texture, this really small one here, and I just bring it all together. And here I add in a noise texture, so I get it just here at the base. I get it just here at the base. I use again our glow texture as a factor and just increase a little bit the contrast so I get a sharper transition in here. And yeah, this is basically my bump map. So I combine all cracks and lava stuff I created to show in the final shader. And now when I plug it in the displacement here, so this is the final bump map, and when I plug it into the displacement and I use the surface, we have the final shader. Just set back the strength to its original value, go out of local view, and yeah, here I just created a little simple and ugly scene. This is just a light in here. I used a little bit of depth of field in the camera, so I used the empty as my focal point and just a little bit of radius here, 0.05. Yeah, that's it. You will see now the final rendered image, and I hope you understood everything. If not, write it in the comments below. So just write at minute so and so, I don't get why you did this and this, so I will help you there. Maybe you have some tutorial suggestions, sorry, and yeah, just feel free to let me know. And maybe you post some things you created with this material here in the comments below. I'm really interested to see your results. And yeah, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. You'll find that in the description. And yeah, I'm finished with this tutorial here. So I'll stop the recording now, and yeah, I hope I see you next time. You liked it, and if you did, give me a thumb up or subscribe to my YouTube channel. That helps me a lot. And yeah, see you next time. Happy blending, and bye.